Everyone, today, Mary encounters the risen Christ. Mary stood outside near the tomb crying. As she cried, she bent down to look into the tomb. She saw two angels dressed in white, seated where the body of Jesus had been, one at the head and one at the foot. The angels asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" She replied, "They've taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they put him." As soon as she had said this, she turned around, and she saw Jesus standing there, but she didn't know it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who are you looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she replied, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Don't cling to me, for I haven't gone up to my Father. Go to my brothers and sisters and tell them, I'm going to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene left and announced to the disciples, "I've seen the Lord." And she told them what he said to her. So I love how maybe the most significant event in Christian history is presented in such a personal way here. You really feel the emotions of this woman who is grieving her teacher and her friend that she loves. And as much as John's gospel sometimes can get, kind of heady or philosophical about the nature of Christ, it still makes space for this real human emotion. Because even in the resurrection, what is human is not abandoned. Instead, it's restored. Through Christ, humanity can be what it's always meant to be. You see a lot of allusions to the creation story in John's account. It keeps mentioning that this is happening in a garden. Jesus himself is mistaken as a gardener, kind of like where Paul talks about him being a second Adam. And so, in fact, there has been a tradition where some will talk about the day of resurrection as the eighth day of creation. And so an Orthodox writer named Alexander Schmemann says that Christ rose from the dead on the first day after the Sabbath. The life that shone from the grave was beyond the inescapable limitations of 7 of time that leads to death. It was thus the beginning of a new life and a new time. It was truly the 8th and the first day, and it became the day of the church. And so we're living in this new age through Christ, and that means there are aspects of this age that we shouldn't cling to, as Jesus tells Mary. But if Jesus is resurrected as a human being and is part of creation, that means that being human, being in creation, still has potential for good. And someday, in the final resurrection, every tear will be wiped away. But that doesn't mean that every aspect, even that aspect of humanity, is bad. Instead, everything about what it means to be human will find its conclusion and find its meaning in the one who calls us by name.